Don't forget that this tutorial is part of a series of tutorials which you can access on our YouTube playlist, or alternatively, if you would like to, you can purchase the whole course on Udemy. There should be a link to the YouTube playlist and a link to our Udemy course, which should always provide the best price in the video description. Now, it was my initial intention when we worked through the exercises to put what we learn into action and apply it to the whole database schema. What ended up happening is that we kept the exercises nice and short to the point and applied what we learned within the exercises to a small section of our Django models. What I'd like to do now is to take everything we've learned so far in this module and to apply it to all of our Django models. This tutorial is completely optional. We won't necessarily be learning anything new in this tutorial. However, I probably will sneak in a few extra functions to add some different functionality to the admin for some of our Django models. For each of our tables, I'm going to double check the name, the field types, and the relationship. And then we'll go ahead and register it with the admin, the Django admin, and make any customizations. So that is going to be the workflow for each and every Django model that we have created. Once we complete the checks on the category table, we're going to create a customization in the admin site for the category table. Before we check the category table, let me just show you what we're going to be building as a customization in the Django admin for the category table. So if I go into categories, add a new category, let's go ahead and add a new category, close, and then we press save. So this is a top category, a top level category. It doesn't have any relationships at this point. And you can see what we're going to be building is a separate column to indicate whether this category is a top level category or whether it potentially is a child category, being a category that's connected to one of these top level categories. So here we're creating a hierarchical structure. Remember, in the category table, we have a foreign key, and that is pointed to its own table, and that will allow us to associate categories to other categories within our category table, thus making a hierarchical type of structure within our database. So let's go ahead and add a new category, this time say boots, and then we'll assign that to the parent category, close, and then we press save, and you can now see that this category, you can see the parent category, close. So we'll build this customization. It'll give you a little bit of an insight of how to make some different customizations, as well as, I think, just present the data more effectively so we can see which category is a top level and which category is potentially a child category. What this also allows us to do, very briefly, is to check the protect. So remember, on delete is protect at the moment. So if we delete, for example, a parent category, a top level category, it means at the moment that won't happen because we have protect. If the top level category is connected to any other category via the foreign key, then we won't be able to delete the parent category. Sorry, not parent as in the field, the parent category, the top category, unless the child categories have been deleted. So let me just show you an example of that. So here the close category is a top level category. And we know that we have just established a connection, a relationship with the boots category. So there's a relationship. If I didn't have protect on the on delete in the foreign key, let's pretend we had cascade. If I were to delete the close category, it would also delete the boots category. But in this case, we have protect. So if I try and delete this, it would say that we cannot delete that because the boots category is connected to it. So I would need to first of all delete the boots category, and then I can go ahead and delete the close category, and everything will be absolutely fine. Right, so let's start from the start. So I'm going to get rid of everything in the admin module. I'll get rid of the initial migration in the inventory migrations, and I will also remove the database. So we'll start completely fresh before we start to work through this. So I'll get rid of any cache. I don't necessarily need to do that, but I'll just tidy everything up. Okay, so let's get going. So category table, we have a name, slug is active, and parent. So those are the four fields. So we have a character field, 100, unique, true. Okay, so a change that I have made here, the slug field. Now, let's remember that the slug field is automatically being generated if we don't populate this field when we submit a new record to be saved to the database. Now remember that this action is going to take place before we save the record. And also then remember that null equals true if we had this here. That is checked at the database level. So what we've done here is we've removed null true because we don't want this field to be null in the database, because we always want it to be populated, because our application will be utilizing this data for certain URL lookups, or at least that's how I perceive this field to be used. So it is a critical field and it's a mandatory field to be populated. So I don't want that. But what I will do is keep blank equals true, because I don't have to have the user typing in a slug. If they don't want to, or if I want to hide this field, I can do, and it's always then going to be populated by the additional function that we've added here in the save function. So we did add in the admin a customization, so the user could see the slug being generated from the name. It was in real time, and that's going to be optional whether you want to keep that or whether you want to hide this slug field and just have it created automatically. Now, a consideration to consider here is that if, for example, someone were to type in a slug which was not unique, so maybe it already existed in the database, what are you going to do about it? So that's an additional task that you would need to consider potentially using this type of setup. So we won't be covering that here. That's a little bit beyond our scope at the moment, but that is something, if you are going to implement this slug type of setup, to consider. Other than that, I think as per design, we're good to go there. Everything is set as intended. Right, so let's go ahead and access the admin site. We'll go ahead and add these customizations to implement what we demonstrated at the start. Right, so let's start off by importing admin and the category. It's recommended not to save if you do have the setup that we defined in our VS Code here. Remember, we are using the source fixel explicit, which means at the moment there is an issue, which means that if I press save, Rough will remove these two imports because we're not using them. So just be careful with that. Right, so let's go ahead now and set, well, we're going to create an inline to begin with, because what we want to do is, which I didn't show you, we're going to want to, when we take a look at a category, we want to also show if there are any child categories, any subcategories. So we're going to need to build an inline for that. So this is going to be a tabular inline. And then we define the model, which is going to be category. We can then go ahead and define the foreign key name. So in this case, the foreign key name is the field parent, and then the extra to define how many extra fields we want to include should we want to add any subproducts, any subcategories. Of course, that can be changed and added to in the admin interface. So we'll just leave one to begin with. So that's the inline. So let's go ahead now and add the parent category. So class, I'm going to call this parent category admin. This is going to extend from admin.model admin. So this is the customizations that we're going to be making. Obviously, we want to define the inlines. So that's going to be the child category inline. So that's our inline. And then our list display. So we'll go ahead and display in our list. Now, remember, we're going to make some customizations here. So we're going to define the name and also the parent name. So that's going to be our new column that we're going to be building and showing to the user if that category is a parent category or a child category. So I've defined this custom column in the admin. So what we're going to need to do now is actually define the data in that column. So for that, we're just going to create a new function. I'm going to call this parent name. I'm going to take in self to access resources in this function. And then the object, and then we go ahead and return. So what we need to return is the object dot parent dot name. If object else, we want none. So what exactly is happening here? Well, maybe the best way to define that or describe that is, let's imagine we had an instance of the category table. That's what we're working with here in this object, right? So what we're doing is we're taking that instance of that category has a name inside of it, a slug is active parent. So what we're doing is we're traversing the object. We're looking at the parent field. So we're going to take a look at that record's parent field. If it has a parent, there will be something populated in this field. And that would typically be a number at this point, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and so on. That will be the number of the ID of the, in this case, the parent category. So we don't want the number, we want the name. So what we do here is we traverse that and we specify the name of it. So we get the name of that category. So what we end up doing is identifying whether this category that we're currently working with has any connections to any other categories. So if it doesn't, then we're just going to return none. So there won't be anything inserted here into this field for that particular record. So all we need to do now, is admin.site.register. And then we go ahead and register the category table and the customizations that we've just generated, the category admin. So we've done two things here. We've added a new field, and as well as that, we've created an inline so that we can show when we look at an individual category, any of the child categories that might be associated to that parent category. Now, I'm feeling good about that code, so I won't go through the process at this point of starting Django up and showing you that. You can pause and do that yourself, but I want to just move through all of the tables to begin with, and then we'll go ahead and fire everything up and double check. Right, so next up is going to be the product type. So the way I'm working here is a workflow which I would use if I was actually going to insert data into this database. So I would start with the categories. I would then work with the product types. I would then create some attributes, attribute values potentially, and then I can build some products, product lines, and product images. So that's the workflow here. So let's take a look at the product type. So the product type model has two fields, name, parent, and of course the ID, which is generated automatically. The name of the product type, 100. I think that will be okay. And we've set the parent here. So we are going to have a hierarchical system like we had in categories. So we have null equals true. So that's absolutely fine. Null equals true. That's not a problem because it's the parent and it might not always be a parent, and then blank equals true. Absolutely fine. So we are going to use cascade here. So I'm going to change that to protect. So I don't want a situation where I accidentally maybe delete a product and then it removes all of the sub product types. So I want to just protect that for now. I will, if I need to delete a product type, what I would do is just delete all the child types first, and then go ahead and delete, if I need to, the main product type. It's a safer option at this point when the specifications are a little bit unknown. So let's jump back into the admin. Let's bring in the product type because we are going to want to build this or insert some data from the admin side. So product type. A similar situation, what we can do is just copy the child category and let's call this child type inline. And then we go ahead and do the same with the parent category. So let's call this parent type admin. It's going to have the inline list display. We don't need to worry about list display here. There's only one field. And we then link this to the inline, which is the child type inline. So don't forget to change the model. So you can see I press save before I actually use that resource. So product type. So let's use the product type. There we go. So feel free to add the additional column if you want the same type of setup that we used in the category table. Last part is to, of course, register this. So this is going to be the product type and then the parent type admin. There we go. We'll take a look at these many-to-many link tables a little bit later, but let's move over to the attribute table. So ID, name, and description. The fields look okay. We have a max length of 200. It's mandatory. Description isn't mandatory. What might be nice is if we add the dunder string return so that we can have a human readable name in the admin when we view the attributes, make it easy for us to identify the attributes from its name. So here, there isn't really much more we probably need to add. So let's take a look at registering that in the admin. Okay, so let's go ahead and add attribute. And then we probably just need to register this. So admin.site.register. And then let's go ahead and just add the attribute. So we just need to register, I think in this case, the attribute table. Now I did mention that this might be another occasion where we can create an inline. So whenever we add an attribute, it might be useful for us to also view on the same admin page any attribute values that are associated to it. Now remember, we do have the one-to-many connection, so we can add the attribute value as an inline really easily to the attribute because it's on the many side of this relationship. So let's create the inline for this. First of all, let's bring in the attribute value table, and then we go ahead and create a new class. So we call this attribute value inline admin dot. Maybe this is a stacked. It's going to be stacked. I think because there's only a few fields, we go for a tabular inline, and then we just define the model equals attribute value. And then we can go ahead and create the attribute admin and then define the inline for that. So admin.model admin. And then let's just define the inline equals, in this case, it's going to be the attributes inline. Okay. Just double check in the attribute value table while we're here. So it should have an attribute value, max length 100. Okay. And then attribute, that's going to be a foreign key over to the attribute table. And we have a cascade option here on the on delete. So if we do build any relationships between the attribute values and the attribute, if we do delete the attribute in the attribute table, it does mean all the values will get deleted. Right, so next up, seasonal events. Just take a quick look at what we're going to need. Start date, end date, and name. So we have the start date, end date, and name, as well as creating a unique name for the seasonal event with a max length of 100. That's all good. Now, in the admin, what we might want to do when we show the seasonal event is to also add the start and end date in the seasonal events list for each record. That's going to make it easier for us to identify without having to go into each event to have a look at the start and end date. So let's do that. Let's bring in the seasonal events table. I had a comma at the end. Nope. Apologies. Seasonal event. I'll do that again. Seasonal event. I guess a little bit annoying because I just naturally press save pretty much all the time. And of course, I just need to familiarize ourselves with the source fix or explicit option. That may be something that is going to start to annoy you. Now, this can be triggered manually. So it might be something that you remove if you are getting a little bit annoyed because you press save quite regularly in those kind of scenarios there where you've added something, in this case, a new module import, and you haven't actually used it just yet. Right, so with that in place, let's go ahead and add a new class, which is going to be the seasonal events admin. And we're going to make some customizations here. So we want to define the list display, and we want to set that so in addition to the name, the name, we also are showing the dates. So that was the start date and the end date. Start date and the end date. So I press save again and it's removed the model. So let me just bring that model back in. So now we can go ahead and register this. So admin.site.register, and then we'll register the model, seasonal events, and then add in the customizations. There may be a few more customizations we make in the seasonal events as and when we start up the admin, particularly for the startup and end date input fields. So we'll take a look at that a bit later. So let's take a look now at the inner tables. I think these are all the peripheral tables we started with. So the product table. Now, of course, this table relies on the fact that there should be a category, which it can be associated to it. And in addition to that, there should be a product type. So data must be inserted into these two tables before we can actually get to insert a product, because the foreign keys here are going to be mandatory. So let's take a look at this table, see if we've got all the fields. So we have our option field defined at the top here. So we've got a PID, which is just simulating the idea that there may be a product ID of some sort. As and when we start to look at custom fields, I think a good exercise would be to create a custom field in the format of a custom product ID, which includes dashes, numbers, and letters in a certain combination. I think that would be a good exercise. But for now, we'll just keep that as a character field. And that would probably then also have a fixed length field of probably around about 10 or 12 characters. Right, so we'll go for a name character field. Yep, 100, this slug. So that's going to be unique and required. All good. Now, what we might want to do, like we did with the category, is automatically populate that. So we'll do that right now. We'll copy that down. So the save function here that we defined in the category, we also use in the product. Now, again, the problem we have here is if we save a slug, which is not unique, remember that the slugs will need to be unique, then we've got a problem. So really, in reality, we would need to further customize this to protect ourselves from that eventuality. Because this is all happening behind the scenes, remember here, if we add this. So this is why sometimes it can be good to add it into the admin, because we can get feedback straight away. Whereas this type of approach, potentially the error will occur, but it would depending on how we set up our application, we may not capture it, and that may cause a problem when inserting data. So we're going to just add that for now, the save function here, so that it creates a slug before saving the data into the database. Should we not pass in a slug? That's the important part, right? So slug, unique, true. And then we can also add the blank equals true here, so that we don't necessarily have to add it when we create a new record in the admin site. Okay, so we've got description, which will not be required necessarily. Is digital set to false, because majority of our products will not be digital, so that is a handy feature. We have created at, so the date time will be created once when a new product is created in the table, and we cannot then edit it. And then updated at, auto now true. Let's remove editable false there for now. So updated at, auto now true, and then is active is going to be set to false to begin with, because we don't want our products to be live straight away. And then we've got the stock status. Okay, and then we have our three keys. So we have a category key, which is set null. So remember what we're doing here. If we do delete a category, the product will remain in the database, but it will be set to null. The foreign key will be set to null. So we would need to potentially deal with that in a certain way, or maybe have a filter in the admin so we can check to see if any products are not assigned to categories. We have the foreign key to seasonal events, again set to null. So that means that we don't necessarily have to connect a product to a seasonal event. And likewise, we won't need to actually insert that into or define that. So null true category. Okay, so we have to, and notice here in the category that we have to actually assign it if we were in the Django admin, but it can be null if it were deleted, if the category was deleted and it was associated to any of the products. Okay, right, so product type, many to many, related name, product type. Okay, so we have our save function. Should we not enter anything into the slug, it's going to take the name and slugify it and save that into the field. And then we return the name of the product to make it nice and easy to view in the Django admin list. So let's now apply all this into the admin. So let's go ahead and first of all create some inlines, because we are going to show, remember, like we have already set up, you might already have this code line about product line inline. We're going to create the inline so that we can see any sub products. Admin dot, and this is going to be a stacked inline. Like I said, we have already created this previously, but I'm just going to type this out again. This is going to be the product line model, which we're going to need to import in product line. Okay, good. And we would just define the extra parameter, extra equals 1, so we have an extra form to fill in so we can add any new product lines. So that's our product line. Then we go ahead and create the product admin so we can make some customization. So what we're going to do here, we'll add a list display, we'll add a list filter so we can filter out categories and stock status. So this is going to be admin dot model admin inlines equals product line inline. And let's go for a list display. So we set the name. So let's show the name, maybe the category, and let's show the stock status. That's probably a good one to show on the list. And then maybe is active. That's probably another list filter to include. And there we go. So that should be okay. So let's not forget the comma. Right, so that's our list display. And let's go ahead and create a list filter. In category, we add a category filter. We'll go ahead and add a stock status. And then let's also add a is active filter. So we can check to see or filter out stock products that are active or inactive. And then finally, we add a search field so we can search, and that will be via the name of the product. Don't forget the comma there. Right, I think that's pretty much it. So let's go ahead and register that. So admin.site.register product, and then the product line inline. So we need to bring in the product table. There we go. Because we are administrating all of the product line data within individual products, we may not want to do anything with the product lines in the admin. I think we just register it to the admin so that we can view individual product lines, but we won't add any customization. So let's just double check these tables, fields rather. And we're going to have the, what we got here in the inlines. So we have the price. Okay, so we've added the correct parameters there. We have the SKU, stock quantity. Default is 0, is active. Default is false. Okay, we have the order, which we haven't really discussed yet. Talk about that another time. The weight, we have a product type. Okay, so in the design, I've just noticed that there's an error. I'm just going to remove the product type. So we have weight, product, foreign key to product. Okay, so protect. So we won't be able to delete any of the product lines should we try to delete any of the products, if the product has any product lines, of course. And then we have the many-to-many over to the attribute values. Okay, so that's pretty much sorted there. Like I said, in the admin, we'll go ahead and we'll just register the product line, but we won't add any customizations at this point. So let's go ahead and do that. So actual fact, let's go ahead and register this admin.site.register. And then that's going to be the product line. Yes, product line. So that model is registered so that we can access it should we want to access individual product lines. Right, so product image. Let's take a quick look. ID name, alternative text, URL, order, product line. Okay. Taking a look at the fields, they look good. I've changed the max length to 100 to 200, I think, for the alternative text. Now the order, again, like with the product line, we've added the order field because we're going to add a number to the product to make it so that we can order it in certain parts of the website. Really, this is a front end consideration. When we will at some point probably need to order or make a hierarchical structure of images so we know which image to show first, potentially. So that ordering system would help that workflow. Product line, foreign key, that's going to be cascade. So if we do delete a product line, it will delete any of the images that are associated to that product line. That's the current setup. Something I want to remove from the product image is the name field. I don't think that's very relevant to the product image because the name of the image will be in the URL, or the link to the image will be in the URL field, including the name of the image. So that probably isn't relevant for us. So I have now removed that and updated the database ERD. I don't think there is any other changes that we need to make. We're going to have an alternative text field, URL, that's mandatory. The ordering. So this is going to be an integer field. I haven't necessarily explained this. It is very much data for the front end to be able to display the images in a certain order on the front end, which can be very useful. And then the product line foreign key. Okay. Now I have just noticed there is some errors in the admin file. So let's just go ahead and fix those from the top here. Right, so there's a few errors I've made. So inline product line here. Okay, let's move down a little bit. That looks good. So search product admin. Yep. So line 45 we're on here. So that's all good. Class inlines. So we'll change that to inlines on line 53. So that's the class attribute admin inlines. So let's move down a little bit further. So we can solve this again. Inlines equals. And in addition to that, let's take a look. So we've got that. Okay, this should probably be object. Return the object. Now we're checking the object if it is, if the parent name is in the object. So not object, it should be obj on line 86. That doesn't, of course, solve our problem. Now, this is related to the product line inline. Now, I think what we've done here in the product admin, we've accidentally added the product inline, where this should indeed be the product admin. So I'm going to change that to product admin. And then in the product admin, we should be defining our inlines. So let's just go back up to the product admin. I do apologize for this. So in our product admin, we're going to add our inlines, and that's going to be the product line inline. There we go. So you will be able to see this base code, this source code, be able to download this and just double check with yours. I do apologize for making those small mistakes. Okay, so back to the product image. Now, what we have here potentially is a nested inline. If we think about it, we have an inline in the product admin view, we inline the product line so we can view the product lines while we're working with the products. But what we also want to do is when we're working with the product lines, we want to inline the product image. So when we add a product line, when it's in the product admin view, we also want to add the product image to the product line. That might be one of those occasions where it's easier to understand than it is to explain. So hopefully you get the general idea. We're going to need to have an inline with an inline. So let's follow the pattern that we've been following so far. So we add the product image, and then we go ahead and add a product image inline like we've been doing before. And this time what we'll do in the product line inline, we'll go ahead and add the product image inline. So we'll try and stack this up and define a nested inline. So let's define inlines with an S and product image inline. Let's give that a go, see what Django says. Looks like it's okay so far. So those are all the checks now for the tables. We did miss the many-to-many tables. We'll make the assumption that there isn't really too much we need to check there. We won't need to apply that or add that to the admin. It's going to do what it needs to do. It just has a primary key and 2 foreign keys. As long as we set that up correctly, we should be good to go. And I'm confident we have done that. So let's now go ahead and make migrations and test out to see if we can follow the workflow of adding data to our table within the Django admin. So first up then, let's make migrations. It looks like everything was good. We made our migrations. Don't forget, I have removed all the migrations. If you didn't do that, you will need to delete them and the database. So let's go ahead and now migrate. Looks like we're good there. And then we're going to need to make a super user. So that's going to be admin again, no email address, just press enter. I typed in admin there, and admin again, yes, and we're good to go. So let's start up the server and take a look. Right, so let's follow the workflow that we've set by first of all adding a new category. So we'll add 2 new categories, close. The slug will be generated for us automatically. There's no parent. We can see that we have a problem here. Attribute object has no attribute name. So we've got a problem here. Non-type referring to name in parent name. Okay. So in actual fact here, the category close has actually been created. The problem we have here is within the categories list page. So it looks like it cannot find the name for some reason. Now in our list view in the code, we've defined we want to show the name and the parent name. So it looks like there is an issue at the moment in finding the name of the object to display that in the list. So the first thing I do is check the category. Does it have a name? Yeah, we do have a name field, so that shouldn't necessarily be an issue. So let's go back to the admin. There's obviously an issue here with our customization. Now, on closer inspection, I do apologize. Again, we're going to need to inspect. So return object.parent name. So we're going to return the parent name. So if the parent name doesn't exist, that's what we're looking for, not if the object exists or not. We're going to return none. So if the object parent name exists, we're going to display that. If it doesn't, if the object parent name does not exist, we're not going to display anything at all. Now, in addition to that, I forgot the S again on inlines. I apologize there. So with that, those small changes, let's just double check. So now when I refresh the page, everything is working fine. So I do apologize again for that small problem. So we now have our closed category. So let's create a subcategory now of boots. We're going to create or connect it to the subcategory. Press save. So now when we go into the clothes individual view, you can now see down the bottom here all of the subcategories associated to clothes. Right, so now let's check the attributes. That's something else we want to add. So an attribute in this case will be maybe size. So save that. Okay, we're going to description, size of something. Press save. And then we'll go ahead and add, actually, we can now view the attribute. Now our intention, if you remember, was to show the values in the same view. And you can see that isn't the case. So we're going to need to check our code. So going back into the admin, you can see here on line 59, we have the inline, so that's correct. Let's display extra equals 1. Let's give that a go to see if we can now view that. So that doesn't look like it's working at this point. Taking a look at the code, I can see that I haven't actually registered the attribute value inline. So that's the problem there. Again, I do apologize. I'm not having a very good day at this point. So you can see that we have a similar problem like we had before, same type of error. Object has no attribute URL. So it looks like I've accidentally added the wrong instance there. So that was the attribute admin. Okay, so I've now registered the attribute and the customizations. I have the inline over to the attribute inline values. We should be good to go. Right, so let's refresh that. You can now see attribute values. So size, let's add some sizes for boots. So we'll save that and we'll go for 10. We'll go for 11. So save and continue editing. Go for 12. So we've added some attribute values now to this attribute of size. Now you may have different products and this might be, for example, size for shoes. You might have an additional attribute size for TVs, which obviously is going to have a different type of value associated to it. So I'll press save there and we go for size shoes there. And so we now have some values associated to it. So we probably have everything set there. So let's have a look at the product types. Okay, so let's add a product type. You can see that looks like we have successfully connected with the product types. Remember, we have the cell foreign key. So let's go for a product type. This is going to look very much like categories at this point, but let's go for close. We'll save and continue. Now we have a product type associated to that, which is going to be boots. So we'll save and continue. So we now have some connectivity, some relationships between and hierarchical structure in that we have a boots type connected now to a main parent type close. Okay, so that seems to be working as intended. So let's move over to products. Let's add a new product. You can see that we've got the filter system in place. So let's add a new product, make a random number. Let's give this a name. Let's go for go for boot. Let's call this boot 1 and give it a description. It's not digital, is active. So it is going to be active. Stock status is in stock. Category, it's going to be boots. And then seasonal event, well, we don't have any yet, so it's not going to be a seasonal event. So it's going to be part of boots. So I'm just going to add it to boots. If I wanted to add any new types, I can do it from here, which I don't want to do. So I'm just going to select boots. And you can see here, hold down Control or Command on Mac to select more than one. Now that isn't necessarily the best approach to this. If you imagine you've got lots of these, it's going to be quite difficult for you to manage that. And we can start to create some product lines. So for this boot called boot 1, we are going to say it's 100 stock quantity. Notice that the SKU is generated for us. So that's the UUID, I think, we've set up. Stock quantity, let's say there's 10 of these items. We have an order. So if we have multiple of these products, which one do we want to show first? What's like the primary product that we want to display? So let's give this an order of 1. A weight is going to be, I don't know, 200 grams. So we probably need to define maybe some sort of system there. So a message, help text message, so we know what type of system we're working with. Or we may set up a new table so that we can define what type of weight system we want to use. That's a kind of an extra component we can think about. And you can see at the moment the attribute values is pretty useless because we don't have a done the string method. So it doesn't make it easy for us to understand what these values represent. So let's go back into the code here and set that up. So let's just go through very briefly Copy this, and we'll go through. We're going to need dunder string here for seasonal events. Product type, it's got one. We've got dunder string for that. So the attribute has attribute value. So let's go for that. Now, the problem we've got here is it's not the name. So we add the value, attribute value. And what might be useful here is if we can view, if we return the attribute name and the value. So let's see if we can do that. So we use f string here. So let's go for, let's set the attribute, and we'll traverse the attribute over to the attribute table and grab the name. And then we'll have a little colon in between. So attribute. So we said here that attribute is not defined for some reason, and because we haven't set self to attribute name, colon, and then the value. So let's try that. And then the product line. And the product line, we haven't got a dunder string return at the moment. And the product image, maybe we want to add something there. So we'll do that as and when we get to that point. So let's go back. We'll just set the first value for now because we will need to refresh. We'll save and continue editing. Let's take a look. So you can see shoe size 10. This is shoe size 10. So now we can go ahead and create another subproduct, which is going to be maybe shoe size 11. So we maybe have 5 of those in stock. Order 2. You can see that this order system needs to probably be automated because we could easily make a mistake there. The weight, 200 again. This is shoe size 11. And then save and continue editing. And the more you work with this, and the more you realize that there's a lot more work to this, because there's a lot of mistakes. Remember, humans are potentially going to be inserting, and there's potentially a lot of mistakes that are going to happen. I mean, it's very easy for me to select shoe size 10 again. So maybe we need to check to make sure that exists, because we don't want to enter 2 product lines potentially with the same shoe size. We might want to, because remember, other attributes we might want to apply here are maybe the color as well. So let's just try that. So let's save and continue editing. Let's go down to the attributes and let's add a new attribute, which is color, English color, shoe. And let's add a value of red. And then let's go for blue. So we'll load this up with different attribute values. Let's go back into the products, our boots. See if we can then, in addition to selecting the shoe size, let's go for red as well. So hold down Command, select more than one item. So let's go for Control. Let's go for Command. So I use Command on the Mac. You can see I can select multiple items. So this is going to be shoe size 11 and red. And this is going to be shoe size 10 and red. Press save. Please correct the errors. I'm told there's some issues here. Field required. Oh, because I've added a new, apologies. I've added a 3rd item here for some reason. So let me just remove that. You can see how tricky it's becoming. I'm scrolling up and down, trying to work out. So this is shoe size 10 red. This is shoe size 10 blue. Press save and continue editing. It looks like if we scroll down, that's now been set. You can see this is not necessarily by default the best way or the most intuitive way of selecting attribute values from this list. And as I was alluding to before we made those changes, as we get deeper into working with our data, we can start to see how potentially this is quite awkward to work with. And that then leads us into more work. But ultimately, it is functional. And this might not be might not be how you actually insert data into a database. It might be a more automated process. So let's make sure that we got some seasonal events. Looks like we've got 2 S's here. So we're going to need to potentially deal with the plural of that. So let's go into our code. Seasonal event. Where is our seasonal events? You can find it. So obviously what we've done here is we've used a plural at the end of the model name. So you can see what's happened. Django's automatically added the plural s on the end of it. So we end up with two s's. And that may be an error that we've created. Or yeah, that's probably an error that we have made by creating it a plural or defining it as a plural. Let's keep it for now. Oh no, we may as well change it. So I'll go ahead and change it. There's a few changes that we need to make. So these are just the small things, the small details, which make a big difference. So I've removed the S there in the models. I need to make sure this may have updated. It hasn't. So what I'm going to need to do here is just search for this within my code. So I'll take the S off there, look down. You see there's a few errors, few S's. Keep going. So I think we're good there. So we've removed all the S's from the admin. In the models, just double check. So we've got events here on line 72. I'm just searching through and we're good to go. So we've made that change. Of course, we're going to need to migrate that. So make migrations. Yeah, we want to make those changes and then migrate. So we've now successfully made that small change. Hopefully that was a good exercise. I realize it's a little bit tedious to make those changes. So I'll go back and I'll refresh and we should now have that in place. So we do have a problem because we're using an S there, that's all. So we just change the URL back to the admin. Let's go back to admin and there we go. So let's add a seasonal event. So the good thing here is that Django does provide us a calendar feature. So it makes it easy for us to enter the start date. So let's go for that. Let's go for the time, 6 p.m. and then the date. So that's a pretty handy feature of Django. That's already built in, so we don't need to worry about that. Let's just call this new event for now. So let's press save. So let's imagine we wanted to associate that product that we created earlier to that event. We can go ahead and do that now. New event. And let's save that. And now we can maybe start to look at the filters. So we don't necessarily have at the moment any products in the close. Now we do, but because we've associated the product in boots and not clothes, it doesn't currently show in clothes. Now we would probably need to make some customizations here so that when we filter for clothes, it also looks for any products that are part of the subcategories of clothes. Now we haven't done that, and we won't do that at this point, but if we select boots, you can see that this product will appear. And in stock, so it is in stock, it's not out of stock, and is active. It's not active, it is active. So this filter is not working. Okay, so let's go back into products. Let's take a look. So it is selected as is active, but doesn't look like the filter. Oh, the filter is working now. Apologies. Yeah, the filter is working. So it is active. So we have a few filters that will hopefully help. And of course, we can also then use the search tool to search for some products. So I hope you enjoyed that. I will lay down some excuses again regarding the problems that we had, but hopefully that gave you some additional experience working through problems in your code base, because the errors that I generated are common types of errors that potentially you will also have. It's very easy to forget some of the more specifics of, like we saw with inline and inlines, the plural. So hopefully that was useful. We now have a usable system. I hope you agree with that, and you can probably see yourself some enhancements that we could make to further streamline the user interface. By working through this exercise, hopefully you've started to see also the depth that we could start to add, and it's almost an endless story. We can start to add more layers to further improve the code base, the UI interaction, and potentially add additional tables like we saw when we discussed the weight, for example. So that's a good example where there's a decision that we need to make. Do we make a new table and make it so that users can optionally select different types of weight, so that they can assign different types of weight in the system. That's something that potentially needs to be considered. But hopefully, like I said, this is a baseline. You can start to see how you might flesh out an admin for a set of tables. And we have now created a functional set of tables and admin for our Django models. The last point, for anyone who did get to this end, thank you very much. Hopefully it was valuable. If you do have any feedback, then please let me know. If you have any questions related to anything that we've covered here, then please just go ahead and ask, and I will always try and get back to you.